Hey game makers, Nelderson here, and today we're going to go over my MV Online. The install, kind of get it configured, get it running. So let's get comfy, let's get into it, let's go. Alright, first things first, Node.js, RPG Maker MV are the requirements. Node.js, easiest way, go to the good old Google machine, type in Node.js. I believe it's nodejs.org, and it is. This is Mac OS for me, but if you have Windows or Linux or whatever, it'll download perfectly fine for you. Okay? With that, RPG Maker MV, most of us here already have that. Not really a big deal. Installation, use git clone or download and unzip to the directory of your choice. I happen to already have it downloaded. So download, unzip it, get it somewhere, and then what we're going to do is we are going to cd into that particular folder. A note here, if you are not familiar with Terminal, there are a ton of YouTube videos out there that can get you a little bit more familiar with Terminal. I'm gonna gloss over Terminal commands. cd is just to change the directory. If you want to learn more, and you should learn more, there's plenty out there. I'm just gonna refer to that. Anyway, all right. So, first things first, let's list everything that's inside. Or actually, let's go look at it. What's inside here? Game resources, npm debug. Why is there an npm debug? Because I messed something up earlier. Anyway, game resources, readme, and the server. So let's go into the server. This is where we'll be spending our time configuring the server. So if we come over to here, right now we're in this, so if we go into the server, okay, and we hit this npm install to download our dependencies, this will go out and fetch forgive me, I've already done my node modules. Give me a second. Yours will not come with the node module. So if you go into the server here, there is no node modules folder. So I just deleted mine just to show you what will happen when you hit npm install here. So when you hit npm install, it'll go out to the internet and download all the dependencies for this this Node.js project. Okay, is essentially what it is. So this is what we have to do. First thing we got to do for the installation. Okay, and next it says after configuring the server to run, and it installed everything correctly. After configuring the server, run npm start to start the server. If we just try to start the server right now, it's gonna kind of say it'll fail out, and it'll fail out because we do not have MongoDB set up. It'll eventually bottom out. It takes a little while, so we'll keep going, and this will eventually error out. Inside the server configurations config.js file, there are several things to configure. So with that, let's open up this. What was it? Server configurations config. Server configurations config. Let's bring that dual screens. Well, let's bring that right up here. Oh, let's make that nice and pretty. Alright, this config.js folder. Alright, let's see what we got here. Inside the server configurations config file, there are several things to configure. Port, which defines which port the server will run on. Right now I have it default to 8000. If you want to put it to 3000, so be it. I just defaulted it to 8. That's all. Jwt Secret defines the secret the JWT is signed. Please change this for security reasons in a production environment. Right now you can keep this just the way that it is, but this is how you are going to be. This is kind of like your secret key on signing everyone's username, not username, it's how you sign sessions when they connect to your server. So take it, start typing a bunch of things in it, and save it. And like I said, this will, you can make this pretty long, make it random, don't worry about it. You know, make it something that you're not going to guess, is pretty much where I'm going with that. It's how everyone is signed into your thing. It's not the worst thing in the world if this has to be changed later on. Okay, it's just one of those things where I want you to change it only because for security reasons. If anyone else is using this and they test out your default, they can mess with your application. Okay, first hash, there we go, is the initial hashing secret for the login system. So this is also kind of a secret, weird thingy here. I'm not going to change this for right now, but it is highly suggested that you do change it past the development environment. So if you're using it for production, if you actually finished your game and you're going to start a brand new database and you want to change this first hash here, and it's the same as the client first hash, which we'll get into a little bit later, but there's a client side first hash as well. Okay. Mail from. This is kind of interesting. So when you register for an account, you send them an email with a link to activate their account, and the email comes from this. It doesn't have to be at Gmail, but there is a way to do it from Gmail. And since Gmail is kind of king in the email world, I just figured I'd show you how to do it through Gmail. Gmail has a cool little program for businesses if you want to get into it, where you can use your domain as the email server. You can use your domain and use Gmail's interface for your domain. So it's really cool. I think I don't know the pricing on it, so I really can't give any information about that. But it's relatively priced. It's not expensive, and you can do all sorts of cool things like Google Admin Console. And really, if you have multiple people in your company or something like that, you can really go nuts with that. So I figured to show it for Gmail. It should work with most SMTP servers. So if you have your own SMTP server, you should be able to throw in your credentials and your at whatever your SMTP server is. Okay. For right now, we're going to throw in my good old Nelderson gaming at gmail.com. I'm going to put my password in off the screen once we get past this, just to show you how it works. But that's all this mail from is. So you put in your username at Gmail, a password, and then the SMTP server. Alright, one other thing to add, guys, with this mail from. There's two things that you have to enable in order for it to work. This google.com/settings/security/less secure apps. You have to sign in and turn this on. This will allow you to use your Gmail account in a Node.js application, as well as this display unlock captcha. You have to allow it. Okay, those two things in combination should be it, and you should be good to go with Gmail. Activation URL. Right now the default is localhost port 8000. Notice the port 8000 /activate. And this is part of the API when we initialize it. The /activate is just a route defined where activation codes will go. And once again, if you don't know what you're touching here, don't touch it. Right now we can keep it at localhost, not a huge deal. But when you decide to buy a domain and you want to put this on a namespace, you just got to change the localhost to the actual namespace. And I'm planning a future video to take this off localhost, but right now we're going to do everything localhost just to show you how it works, just to show you how to get it up and running. But you can totally take this online and do like, myawesomewebsite.com or whatever. Okay, this last one right here, we're going to go into a little bit. MongoDB Connect. So we are going to be using Mongo database to connect to to add accounts, usernames and emails and ranks and gold or whatever else you want to put into it. It's just going to be our collection for all of our stuff. All of our data is going to be a MongoDB. There's two general ways that you want to approach this right here. You can make a local host MongoDB database, or we can do what I'm going to do the easy way. mlab.com. Kind of a cool little site, especially for development purposes. It's really nice. You set it up, you pretty much just tell it to make you a 0.5 gigabyte database, and that's it. For development purposes, it is more than enough. So I already made an account, and now I'm just remembering my account, which is always helpful, remembering the account. Alrighty, I will totally save that. Alrighty, so let us create a MongoDB deployment. And when you get to the screen, so I've already gone through the process of actually creating an account, accepting their terms of use, getting their activation email, all that stuff. When you get here to create new deployment, you can choose between Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, or Microsoft Azure. And remember, I said that this was free. So at the replica state cluster, you're going to notice that it's like $15 per gigabyte, and this is like, whoa, I am not paying no $3,790 a month. Yes, that is totally legit. So single node, this nice little sandbox, this little 0.5 gigabyte sandbox, that is what we're going with, and we're going to go and give it a database name, and we're going to say, ooh, something awesome like awesome test. Spell it right. And it's awesome test. Oh, that's a sad face right there. No capital letters. Please wait. Alright, so we are awesome test. Okay, let's dive in here. Alright, so the first thing that you want to do once you're in here is create a user. So add database user. Something with this database user, I would, I'm going to make a quick and simple one, just so for austerity purposes, just so you can see what's going on. I'm going to delete this user right after I make this video. But I would highly suggest that you do not make this like admin or MongoDB admin. Try to pick a name that's kind of not, you're not going to guess. And same thing with the password. Do not make it any of your other, like normal account passwords. That's all I'm going to suggest with this. Okay. You're going to literally stick it in this application, and that should be pretty much it. Okay. So let's pick an awesome database name like, NelAdmin. Whoa. NelAdmin. And I'm going to give an awesome database password of Nelderson, which once again, deleting it right after this. Okay, create. Never. Alrighty, so we made a database user. Let's go back to this config. And you notice that we have MongoDB username, password, at link to mongodb.com, blah, 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 collection. So we need to add a collection as well as a user. Let's make this login, because it's a login collection. You want to what? We're not going to do login because, well, let's call it my game. Okay, so it's my game collection. We got NelAdmin user. So if we go in here, one of the things that it does tell you, tells you right here. If you notice, this looks awfully familiar. MongoDB user password at mlab.com/awesometest. Notice how it kind of looks similar to that. It's because it's pretty similar to that. So we're going to take this. As soon as my mouse will work for me. Take this. And we are going to whoa. shove it on in here. Preferably a little bit better than that. And we are going to, instead of DB user, we are going to put admin. And for that password, that super awesome secret password, we're going to put Nelderson. Okay. So this MongoDB, and by the way, let's go back to this Node.js. If you look at it, it kind of blew up on us here. Failed to connect to server, linked to MongoDB. So I mean, it just, yeah, it failed with the server. So Control C on a Mac cancels out of the process. If you're not familiar with Node.js, by the way, if you're not familiar with Node.js, that's okay. This is something that might take you a little while to learn. I would highly suggest watching other YouTube videos on just Node.js, what it is, why it's there, how it works, basic functions, all that good stuff, because this will only help. Okay? So, MongoDB, Nelderson, Neladmin. Really quick, off the screen, I am going to update my password for my Nelderson Gaming, and then we will start up this server. Okay, so give me a second. Alright, let's give this a go. npm start. Server is on and running. Excellent. Alrighty, is there anything else that we need to configure here? URL MongoDB connect. Nope, that's it. Server's configured. That's pretty much it for the server that you need to do right out of the box. I will be going over once again this server.js once we start adding more modules, but for the basic login screen, this is it. Okay? So now that we're all good, the server is running, it looks like it's connected to MongoDB just fine. We'll keep an eye on that and make sure. It does take a while to error out if it's going to error out because it tries to connect multiple times. So we'll let that run. It should work. Once we get through the client configuration, it'll be a little quicker once we actually try to connect to it. If it keeps failing out, then we know something's wrong. Okay. So client configuration. Let's go into this. Add the CSS folder to the root of your project directory. So anything to do with the client side, we're going to go into game resources. So we have this CSS, this JS, and this simple sample index.html. So let's go into RPG Maker MV, and you can't see it on the screen, but I have it off the screen. I'm going to create a new project really quick. Let's do, sure, Project 6. That's what we're gonna do. Totally. Because I botched the living heck out of that one. Okay, Project 6 it is. Nobody talks about my awesome game anymore. Nobody. Penalty of death. My awesome... no, it's not my awesome game. It is Project number 6. Alright. Let's get in here. Alright, so the CSS folder is something that you can just copy and paste over. Okay, because you do not have a CSS folder within here. So let's copy and paste the CSS folder. Let's take the... Well, first let's take the libraries. So I'm just going to select all, copy. So we're in JS libraries. We are going to paste these, which will add them. Okay. And then we are going to come into, that was the libraries. We're going to come into the plugins and we're going to add these nice two lovely login and main core to the plugin folder. So JS plugins, and we're going to add these to the defaults. Okay. And just to make things easier, I am just going to get rid of these just so you don't have to see them. You don't have to worry about them. You don't think that these are necessary at all. We got login and main core. Okay. And then the last thing that we have to do, so that was those two things. The game resources JS plugins to the JS plugins folder, the library to the library folder, and then modify your index.html file in your game to add this in the header and this in the body. So if you look at the sample index, If I open this up, if you look at this nel ad right here, it is the exact same as this nel ad right here, and this body nel ad is the exact same thing as the nel body in here. This is just kind of like a sample index, like worst case scenario, you can't get yours to work, you could stick this in here. You might have to change the title in it, but it should, just to show you one that does work. So if we take what's in the head here, so we're going to take this sample index and we are going to modify our main index, our project 6 index HTML. We're going to open this also in Atom, which I highly recommend. It's a solid editor. So we're going to copy. And we're going to paste in the header. And then we're going to put this in the body. And we're going to hit save. And that's that. Okay. And we are all set to go. That was it that really needed to run. That's it. Now we can just do our normal MV kind of stuff. Come into here. Let's delete that. Let's add, and why it came down on the other screen I have no idea. Let's add the main core. And I'll go over what those things were in a second. And let's add the login core. Alrighty. So if we did everything correctly, no, not open. If we did everything correctly, we hit save, we hit start. You will get this, which is a nice little login screen. Isn't that cool? Now, if you try to put in something that isn't in, it'll say error invalid username. This is actually a huge deal. If you are getting error invalid username by just typing in whatever, that actually means that it is posting. It's actually pinging off the server. So this particular invalid username is actually server API routes, login routes, and under the login function, under the login post, under the login post, that particular username not found, invalid username, right here. So that's a really cool thing. So since we have just a brand new MLab, there's no documents within here. We have no idea what's going on. Let us add a brand new user. And since I am Nelderson, let's make me. So Nelderson, I can add myself. There's something I have learned. At gmail.com. Whoa. Yeah. One of the things that you'll notice is that the right and left arrows don't work. It's something I'm going to work on. So gmail.com. And I'm going to make a super secret password here. Gmail.com. And I hit submit. And it says, check your email for the activation link. And if... you know what? Let's see if we can pop up Gmail right here. Yeah. RPG Maker MMV MMO. Hello, Nelson. Welcome to RPG Maker MV MMO, which, by the way, I'm also going to... I just realized I really need to make it so that you can define exactly what this says. Your account has been registered, but you need to activate it by clicking on the following link. Awesome. If you notice, it starts off with that HTTP localhost 8000/activate. This is where that activation URL really where it starts. Okay, so when you actually have this is going to work because I am on my own machine, so localhost will work on my own machine. But if you're not familiar with how networking works, if you're outside of your own computer, this will not work for anyone like on your local network or over the internet or anything like that. So for right now, for our purposes, this works just fine, but eventually that activation URL will have to change if you want to send it to people outside. Okay, so we click on this, And it says activation. Awesome. So get activate totally went through, no problem. So activation worked. So if we go back to login and I throw in my credentials, my brand new awesome credentials, I should be able to get right in. And there you go. We now have a login system for RPG Maker MV, and we have just made it so that you have to log in order to get into the game. This is pretty cool, but it may not be what you want. You know, this was kind of where I was in my passive MMO system, and where Sir Mac Potato was in his system, where it forced you to log in. And that works for some games, you know, especially like an MMO-ish type of game or something along those lines. Or maybe you just want your players to log into your system. Totally fine. But something we can also do instead of this, let's go into some of those plugin options. So in the online main core, I do want to highlight the two things within the main core. I tried to keep this as light as possible. I figure as we go through this and we start learning more, we're going to add a bunch of configurations, but I figured to keep it really simple and see what the community wants. So with that, server URL, right now it's pointing to the localhost because you do have to actually connect to the API. So right now it is the default localhost port 8000. Like I said, with the namespacing and everything else, you know, you want to be myawesomewebsite.com, you know, this is where you would configure it here. You have to configure it here. You have to configure it on the server side. You have to configure it on the activation URL. So there's a few places you got to do it, but and I'll make it a little more succinct. I'm going to come out with a later video on how to put this. I think I'm going to do it with Amazon Web Services. So I'll show that at a later date. And then the first hash, and this is the same exact first hash as the one that I suggested in the server, the config.js, right down here. This first hash is exactly the same as this first hash. So you can change both of them, and that way it's a different first hash from the default. I just didn't do it because this is purely development for my purposes. Okay, so with that, that is the main core configurations. The login core is just as simple, only two options. Okay, and it is force login on startup and socket.io connection equal to true. So long story short, what's going on here? Force login on setup. Let's change this to false real quick. Socket.io connection really is not an issue right now. Pretty much you are Socket.io doesn't. This allows it so that it connects to Socket.io by default as soon as you log in. Unless you know what you're doing, don't touch it. Not really a big deal if you have somebody connecting to your Socket.io and there's nothing within your socket connections. If nothing's bound, then nothing's really going to happen with it. So I wouldn't worry about this one too much, unless you want to keep everything just API connection. If you're developing for mobile and a couple other and even mobile, you can get away with it. But if you're developing for a lot of like I don't know, there's some use cases for turning this to false, but just for right now, don't. Just leave it the way that it is. It won't break anything. It just kind of upgrades the connection as soon as it connects to as soon as you log in. That's all this does. So the force login on startup, turning it to false, and then dragging this up here will make it so that you can just sign into the game. And that's it. Good to go. With that said, there is a plugin command, which I just realized I didn't put in the documentation. Tisk. I know. If I can find it. Oh, where am I here? Goodness gracious. All right, so let's go into JS plugins, login core. If we drag this up here, plugin command. So online login, it doesn't have to be anything specific. Did I put this in here? Yeah, I did put it in the instructions. All right, set force login on startup parameter to false. You can use this plugin command to pop up the login window at any point in your game. So online login. So if we take this and we make this awesome event, and we put in the plugin command of online login. Okay, you're going around in your game and say you want to start, you want to log in at a different point in your game, or you even want to make a multiplayer option somewhere down here. You can certainly, I just wanted to make it separate in some way, shape, or form. So right here, I just took kind of the background of the map, and you can, just to show you, it still has all the same logic behind it. But I can sign in right there. And then I'm back in. I'm connected to the server. I'm connected to the socket. I'm logged in. I have a valid token. And we're all set to go. That's it. So this is the entirety of the system, front to back. You can even see, right now I have Morgan enabled, which shows you all the posts, all the GET requests, everything like that. You can totally disable that, by the way, within the server.js, the logger, for development, and then for development. These two lines, you just delete them and you're good to go. Okay, so this is pretty much it. There's not too much more than this. Right off the bat, this just logs you in. It's a nice secure connection. It's consistent, it works, and just to show you with this MLab, if we go into accounts, oh, would you look at that, it makes a new collection, huh? I thought I'd put it within my game. Oh, well, learn something new every day then. So in my accounts, I now have my UID, my salt, my hash. Salt and hash is used for password management. You do not store passwords in development. So we store it as salts and hash. Now technically somebody could take this salt and somebody could take this hash and they could really go nuts and try to figure out my password and everything else. Yeah, whatever. Go for it. I mean, I did like a test password anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. But the point is that even if it was hacked, you would have time to inform your users and force them to change their own passwords if it was ever taken. And as you can see, activated equals to true, and you can come in here and put like activated to false. Save and go back. And if I come in here and run it, let me change this to true really quick. Can't see it on screen. Yeah, that's the only problem with two screens when you're doing this, but neither here nor there. Alright, so if I try to log in after turning my thing to false, it should say error account not activated. Okay, so this is a cool way to be able to just come in here. Somebody's really having a problem or something, they're legit, you can just come in here, true, save and go back, and you're done. And then if I try to connect now, it'll actually go right through because it's pretty much real time. So that's all that there is to that. There is so much more that you can do with this. This is just the absolute bare bones. This is the groundwork, folks. This is what we need to do in order to get, seeing people's names on screens, seeing people in the chat and having a chat and making it all kind of flow together. Like I said, I'm really going to be focusing on improvements on this. I've already suggested several, as well as updating the documentation to reflect what I went through in my own experience, kind of installing this on my own and explaining it to you how to install it. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get yours up and running. Let me know where you're having troubles in the either in the forums or in the YouTube channel. I hope I've answered everything for you. Probably haven't. With that, ladies and gentlemen, happy game making.